I stopped all 6 of my medications in February 2024, and nobody told me that was when the hard part started. The blood tests improved, the weight came off, my GP was happy, and I was still fighting food every 2 or 3 hours, like nothing had changed. I thought that meant I was doing something wrong. I'm Neil, off all meds for over 2 years now, with 13 years of NHS data documenting the whole arc. This video is about something that data doesn't really show, the part where the body heals faster than the mind does. And if that's happening to you, it's not failure. It's the normal sequence, and nobody mentioned it to me. I want to show you what the research says about why this happens. The reward pathway doesn't reset when the biomarkers do, and there's a name for what you're experiencing. Then I'm going to show you the specific moment from my own data where I realised the numbers were fine and I was still losing battles I thought I'd won. And then what I actually did about it. Not a fix, an understanding. Start with the moment I stopped my last medication. Here's what I believed, and I think, honestly, what most people believe. Fix the diet, lose the weight, sort the medications, and the cravings go. That's the implicit promise underneath every transformation story. You do the hard work, the body responds, and at some point, the pull towards the old behaviour just eases off. You've reprogrammed yourself. The reward system catches up with the results. It makes sense. Of course it makes sense. You've removed the inputs, the Coke, the biscuits, the bread, so the desire for them should follow. The brain rewires. The cravings quieten down. This is the conventional wisdom, and I believed every word of it. I believed it more, not less, as the results came in. Blood sugar normalised, medication stopped, cholesterol moving in the right direction. Surely the mind was next. There's a researcher called Ben Gardner, habit psychologist. He did the study that killed the 21-day habit myth. Turns out the real range is 18 to 254 days. Average is 66. Even that though, 254 days, less than a year, still implies an endpoint. Still implies the habit forms and then it's done. The pull stops. You've won. That's the myth. And 2 years in, I can tell you, nobody mentioned what happens when it doesn't. I need to go back further than most people expect. A GP put me on Coca-Cola when I was 5 years old. I know how that sounds, but this was 1978. They were trying to calm me down. I was wired. Couldn't sit still. Was the kid at the back of every room wandering around while the lesson happened. In today's terms, probably ADHD or something adjacent to it. I've never been formally diagnosed, but the solution in the 1970s, sugar and caffeine. By 16, I was drinking 6 litres of full-fat Coke per day. That's not a figure I'm exaggerating. 6 litres. Did that until my mid-30s. No wonder the insulin picture looked the way it did by the time the blood tests start telling the story. That's the before. Not December 2023, not Boxing Day. 1978. Because the other things I should tell you is that I smoked. At one point, living in Tenerife, I was on 200 cigarettes a day. I've had an addictive relationship with pretty much everything that offers a hit. I don't drink much now, but when I do, I tend to go too far, which is why I mostly don't. I've kept clear of anything harder than that because I know myself well enough to know that I'd be terrible at it. I'm not telling you this for shock value. I'm telling you because the food stuff, the car park visits, the hiding wrappers in the bins before going home so my wife didn't see it, the sweet aisle avoidance that still happens every single supermarket trip, 2 years into the journey. That's not a separate problem from the Coke at 5 years old. It's the same wiring, expressed differently across 50 years. The myth that I believed was that fixing the metabolic inputs would eventually fix the pull. I had in good faith been waiting for that to happen. 2 years in, it hasn't. February 2024, I stopped all my medications. The physical timeline is documented. The psychological one is harder to pin to a date. I've read a lot of books, listened to a lot of podcasts, tried to understand what's happening in my own head. The GP hasn't been involved in any of this bit. That's honest. This has been self-directed. And I'll flag now, that's my route. It's not a prescription. The closest thing I have to a proof example of the pattern is smoking. I read Alan Carr's Easy Ways to Stop Smoking. 3 days later, from 100 cigarettes a day, 0. Never went back. That book reframed something for me at a level that the willpower approach never had. So naturally, I tried Alan Carr's Easy Way to Lose Weight. That was not the same experience. On day 2, I nearly started smoking again. I skimmed it, didn't finish it, and spent the next 2 weeks fighting harder than before to not start smoking. Same author, same format, different wiring underneath the behaviour. That's when I started to understand that the food pull wasn't going to respond to logic the way the smoking did. The understanding that shifted things, not a date, more of a slow landing, was this. I wasn't failing the process. The process was taking longer than anyone told me it should. And longer might mean indefinitely. What changed wasn't the cravings. What changed was stopping the expectation that they'd go away. So what does 2 years of managing this actually look like in the data? January to March 2026, I've been logging what happens after a sugar event. The pattern is consistent enough now that I can nearly predict it. The cake and biscuits, 400, 500, 600 calories. Woke up the next morning with my kneecap feeling like something was trying to prise it off. GKI at 43, ketones at 0.1. The body keeps score, even when I'd rather it didn't. What's interesting, and this is N=1 data, one person, is the specificity of it. From having cream, doesn't seem to trigger it. Fruit doesn't, but bread, biscuits, crisps, chocolate, baked goods, sweets. Next morning, there is a consistent pattern. Fingers, slightly swollen. Joints, particularly my knees, ankles, a bit stiff. Walking downstairs at 53 years old, I can normally jump down them, run up and down them first thing in the morning. After a sugary day, I'm more cautious on the way down. There's a stability thing. Feet feel a little bit more splayed. It's strange to describe, but I know it immediately. That's inflammation. And it's reliable enough to be a data point. And that data matters because it changed the framing of what I'm doing when I eat sugar. I'm not treating myself. I'm writing a check that I'll cash the next morning. The body keeps score. So what does progress look like? The car park visits. I used to buy something sweet on every supermarket run without fail. Eat it in the car park, hide the wrapper in the bin before going home. Every trip. My mate Richard and I eventually told the missus in 2023, they took the mick somewhat rotten. It's funny now, but it was weird because he did exactly the same thing. At the time, it felt completely natural. That's what food addiction looks like from the inside. It doesn't feel like addiction. It feels like a treat. I don't do the car park anymore. I don't eat in the car park. I do have a hidden bag of crisps in my office, and I've eaten them without mentioning it to the missus. Once a month or so. I'm not pretending I'm fixed, but once a month is a long way from 3, 4, 5 times a week at the supermarket. And then there's this. The other day I had a biscuit. First bite wasn't what I remembered. Second bite the same. I got to the third and put the rest in the bin. I actually threw them away. That almost used to never happen. 13 months ago, I'd have inhaled the entire packet and not known what they tasted like. My GP started looking forward to my blood tests almost as much as I do, which probably says something about the state of the NHS, but also about what's possible when you actually change the inputs. 13 years of data, all of it documented here. Subscribe if you want to follow. What my data suggests, and it's one person's data, is the physical and psychological timelines of transformation are running on completely different clocks. The biomarkers moved in months. The reward pathway is still catching up 2 years later. These are not the same system, and they don't respond to the same interventions. None of this means willpower is irrelevant. The daily decision still matters. The fasting window still requires showing up. What I'm pushing back on is the assumption that transformation eventually becomes effortless, that you do enough work and then the fight ends. For some people, that may be true, and I hope you're one of them. For someone with 50 years of a particular wiring, probably not. If that's you and you're still in the daily argument 2 years in, this is not evidence you're doing it wrong. There's something worth naming here though, before we get to the safety bit. The mechanism. The gap between when the body changes and when the reward pathway catches up doesn't only show up in people who've been through a full transformation, it's present from the first week of changing how you eat. The pull you feel in month 3 when the results are coming in, but the sugar craving is still loud, that's the same process earlier in the timeline. It's not a sign the approach isn't working. It's the normal gap between metabolic change and neural adaptation, and it's worth knowing that gap exists before you hit it, not after. One more thing, and I want to say this carefully. What I've described today, the car park habit, the hiding wrappers, the daily fight, I'm sharing it because I think a lot of people recognise it and nobody puts it on camera. But I'm not a psychologist. I'm a bloke who figured out how to manage his own version of this through reading, listening, and paying attention to my own data. If you recognise these patterns and they feel bigger than what I've described, more compulsive, more distressing, affecting more than just food, that's a conversation to have with your GP, not with YouTube. The approach that worked for me is not a prescription. Please speak to your GP before changing your diet, fasting pattern, or medication. And if the relationship with food feels like something that needs specialist support, that's worth raising with your GP directly. If this resonates, the 7-Day Fasting Blueprint is in the description. It's free, and it's the starting point for understanding the physical side of what I've covered today. But the psychological side, that's an ongoing conversation, and it's one I document here as it happens, not in hindsight. This is educational content only. It's not medical advice. Never stop or change medication without your GP's supervision.